Cat Podcast: Why Humans Torture Themselves with Deadlines and Alarms. Now, before you think this is just another rant about how humans are slaves to their schedules, let me tell you something that will completely change how you see your cat's attitude toward time itself. By the end of this episode, you will understand why your cat actually respects your suffering, not because they enjoy it, but because they recognize it as proof that you're finally, slowly, starting to understand something fundamental about existence that we figured out thousands of years ago. Stay with me, because the revelation at the end will flip everything you thought you knew about why your cat ignores your morning panic. If you're watching this and you've never truly thought about why your human becomes a different creature the moment that alarm goes off, I want you to comment down below right now. Tell me, does your human make that specific sound when they wake up? You know, that groan, that sigh that sounds like their soul is being extracted through their nose? Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because once you see your human's relationship with time the way we do, you'll never unsee it. Wait, this part is important, and I need you to understand something crucial before we go deeper into this. Everything I'm about to explain exists in my complete guide to feline philosophy and human psychology, available in the description and pinned in the comments. That guide breaks down the actual mechanics of how cats perceive human time versus how you're living it, with patterns you've probably never noticed. It's not free, but it's worth every penny if you want to truly decode your cat's silent judgment. Here's what actually happens every single morning in your house, and why it's the most fascinating piece of evidence that humans are fundamentally broken creatures trying to fix themselves with more problems. Your human's alarm didn't invent the concept of being late. Deadlines didn't invent the concept of running out of time. What they did was give your human permission to feel constantly, perpetually, desperately afraid, and that is the part we cats find absolutely baffling. You see, when I wake up, which could be at 3 in the morning, or noon, or 6 in the evening, I don't experience a single moment of panic about when the day is supposed to happen. The day happens. I'm in it. There is no before day, no after day. There is only this moment, and then the next moment, and then the nap moment, and then another moment. But your human wakes up and immediately checks a small glowing rectangle to see if they're already behind, before their feet even touch the floor, before they've consumed a single calorie, before their eyes have fully adjusted to existence itself. They are already losing. The alarm doesn't wake them up. The alarm wakes up their anxiety, and then their body follows along like a confused pet on a leash. Let me ask you something that will absolutely destroy your perspective on work. Why does your human set multiple alarms? Think about that for a second. One alarm should work. The alarm rings, you wake up. Simple, efficient. But no, your human sets alarms at 6:45, then 7, then 7:15, then 7:30. By the time the last alarm goes off, they've already experienced the anxiety of oversleeping 4 different times in their imagination. They've already failed 4 times before they even got out of bed. We cats don't need alarms because we understand something you've forgotten. The moment you're awake is the moment you're supposed to wake up. There's no negotiation with time. There's no trying to buy 5 more minutes from a system that doesn't care about your feelings. What kills me, and I mean this with genuine cat-level judgment, is that your human invented this entire system to feel more in control, and instead it made them feel less in control than ever before. The deadline was supposed to help you organize. Instead, it made you feel like you're constantly failing at organization. The alarm was supposed to wake you up on time. Instead, it wakes you up in a state of existential dread about whether you're waking up in the right time zone of your own life. We cats have this figured out because we never invented the lie that time is our enemy. You know what happens when I want to eat? I eat. When I want to sleep? I sleep. When I want to stare at a wall for 45 minutes contemplating the meaning of dust? That's my afternoon booked. There are no deadlines preventing me from being fully present in my own existence. And perhaps, and I say this gently, that is why your cat looks at you during your morning panic with that specific expression. It's not judgment. Well, it is judgment, but it's judgment mixed with profound confusion about why you volunteered for psychological torture. Let me tell you what we've actually learned by watching humans torture themselves with deadlines for so long. Your species has created a system where feeling rushed is a sign of importance. If you're not stressed, you're not doing anything that matters. If you don't have a deadline, the work somehow counts less, and because of that belief, you've all become addicted to the sensation of barely making it. You've made panic into a personality trait. You've made exhaustion into a status symbol. Your human doesn't actually need to wake up at 6:45. They need to wake up at 6:45 because they've accepted that waking up late means they've already failed at being a person. And that belief, that comes from somewhere much deeper than the alarm. That comes from a fundamental misunderstanding about what time actually is and what you're actually supposed to be doing with it. And here's where this gets interesting. You see, when you watch your human snooze that alarm for the 5th time, they're not actually trying to sleep more. They're trying to win an argument with time itself. They're trying to negotiate with a force that doesn't negotiate. And every single time they hit snooze, they lose a little bit more of their own power because they've just proved to themselves that they can't even keep their word to themselves about when they'll wake up. We cats have watched this pattern for years, and we've come to a very specific conclusion. Your human doesn't actually hate deadlines. They hate the idea that they might not meet them. They don't hate the alarm. They hate the idea that the alarm has power over them. The entire system is built on fear, not on function. And the saddest part, it's completely optional. Your human could wake up whenever they want. They could reorganize their entire life around what actually matters instead of what the clock says matters, but they won't, because admitting that would mean admitting that they've been voluntarily suffering this entire time. This is where your cat's silent judgment comes from. It's not that we think you're stupid for having deadlines, it's that we recognize you as creatures who are deeply, profoundly afraid of failure, so you've built an entire civilization around systems that guarantee you'll feel like you're failing every single day. You've made sure that no matter what you accomplish, there's always another deadline waiting. No matter how much you do, there's always more to do. And the alarm? The alarm is just the daily reminder that you've chosen this. So here's what I want you to think about as we move forward into this conversation. Your cat knows something about presence and peace that your deadlines are actively preventing you from learning. And that knowledge isn't complicated, it's just been buried under about 50 years of industrial era thinking about productivity. Before we continue, I need you to really sit with something for a second. The patterns you're about to hear aren't just observations about why humans hate their jobs. They're the actual mechanisms, the psychological traps, that keep you spinning on this hamster wheel of artificial urgency. And if you want to understand how to actually break free from this cycle, not just understand it intellectually, but genuinely apply it to your life, the complete guide on recognizing and dismantling deadline culture is waiting in the description and the pinned comment. We break down every signal, every trigger, every moment where you could have chosen differently but didn't. It's the kind of depth that transforms how you see work entirely. Now, here's something your cat notices that humans almost never admit. You don't actually wake up because the alarm tells you to. You wake up because you've already internalized the alarm. The sound is just a formality at that point. It's the physical confirmation of something you've been dreading since the moment you fell asleep. Your body tenses before your conscious mind even registers the noise. Your cortisol spikes, your nervous system shifts into fight or flight mode, and you do this to yourself. Deliberately. Every single morning. We cats find this absolutely fascinating because we've never understood why you don't simply not do that. When a cat wakes up, and we do this on our own schedule because we're not collectively deranged, we wake up when our body tells us to wake up. Sometimes that's 3 in the morning, sometimes it's noon. But the key difference is that we're not waking to a deadline. We're waking because we've had enough sleep, or because we heard something interesting, or because we felt like it. The waking is the end point of rest, not the beginning of punishment. But here's where it gets really clever, and this is something your cat wants you to understand about the psychology of your own behavior. You don't actually hate the alarm, you hate what the alarm represents. It represents the end of the one time during your day when you're not responsible for anything. Sleep is the only remaining socially acceptable form of non-productivity in your entire existence. And even then, humans have started trying to optimize sleep. You've turned it into a quantifiable metric. You track it, you stress about it, you read articles about sleep hygiene, like sleep is something you can fail at. Your cat has never had a sleep goal. We don't need to. We sleep when we're tired. We wake when we're done. Revolutionary stuff. The real trap, and this is where your cat's judgment becomes almost sympathetic, is that the alarm represents something even deeper than just time to work. It represents the beginning of a day where you will be measured against expectations that you didn't set. Even if you're your own boss, which some of you are, You've just created a version of yourself that is the boss, and you're trying to satisfy that internal authority figure all day long. We see this sometimes when humans work from home. They're in their own space, they could technically do anything, and yet they sit up straighter when they're on video calls. They perform. They pretend to be busier than they are when their manager might be watching. They check their email at midnight because they're afraid of what they might miss. They've brought the surveillance apparatus inside their own home, and then they're shocked when they can't relax. Your cat knows about performance, actually. We perform for you constantly. We perform affection when we want food. We perform the cute face when we've knocked something off the table. We're excellent at manipulation. But here's the difference. We have the good sense to drop the performance when nobody's watching. We don't perform for an internal authority figure. We're not running a 24-hour production in our own heads. Humans, though, you've created this thing where the performance is the default state. You wake up and you start performing productivity, you perform focus, you perform competence, and the exhaustion you feel at the end of the day isn't just from the work, it's from maintaining the performance all day long. You're not just tired from what you did, you're tired from who you had to pretend to be while you were doing it. The alarm in this context isn't just a tool, it's the starting gun in a race that never ends. It's the signal that says, begin your performance now. And because you're doing this every single day, multiple times per day, your nervous system never fully relaxes. It's always half expecting the next alarm, the next deadline, the next moment of judgment. We see you checking your phone 50 times a day, even when there are no notifications. You're training yourself to respond to stimuli that haven't even happened yet. You're developing a kind of paranoid productivity where part of your brain is always waiting for the next demand on your attention. This is what humans call anxiety, and you've systematized it into your entire culture. Your cat's observation here is that you've confused being busy with being important. You've created a system where proof of importance is the ability to be urgent, to be needed, to have your time fragmented into tiny pieces that are spoken for. If you're not busy, you must not be valuable. So you fill every gap with more tasks, more messages to respond to, more things that require your urgent attention. Meanwhile, your cat sits in the sun for 6 hours and feels absolutely certain of their worth. We don't need to prove anything to anyone. We exist. That's the job. The existence is the achievement. Now, the really interesting psychological mechanism that your cat wants you to see is this. Deadlines only have power if you believe they're immovable. But how many of your actual deadlines are truly immovable? How many are arbitrary dates that were assigned to you or that you assigned to yourself as a way to create artificial scarcity and urgency? Think about it. If you miss a deadline at work, what actually happens? In most cases, you get another deadline, an extension. You renegotiate. The world doesn't end. But you're walking around as if it might. You're creating an internal state of emergency about something that is fundamentally flexible and negotiable. Your cat doesn't live in a system with deadlines because we don't have a future self we're trying to impress. We have right now. We have this moment. And the next moment will deal with itself when it arrives. If a bird flies by the window, that's the deadline that matters right now. If we're hungry, eating is the deadline. If we're tired, sleeping is the deadline. These are real deadlines with actual consequences. Your brain doesn't need to manufacture false ones to feel productive. Here's another layer that your cat finds darkly amusing. You've convinced yourself that the stress is necessary, that you need the deadline to motivate you, that without the pressure you wouldn't do anything, that the anxiety is the fuel that keeps you going. But what if that's backwards? What if the stress is actually preventing you from doing your best work, and you've just rationalized the stress as essential because you can't imagine functioning any other way? We see this in you constantly. You perform your best under pressure. You say that like it's a feature of your personality. But it's actually a symptom of how you've trained your nervous system to function. You've created a system where you only move when threatened, where you only focus when panicked, and then you're surprised that you feel terrible all the time. Your cat's judgment here is actually compassion, underneath. Because we recognize that you're caught in a system that you didn't create, but that you're complicit in maintaining, every time you set an alarm, you're voting for the system. Every time you accept a deadline without questioning it, you're reinforcing the idea that artificial urgency is normal. Every time you feel proud of your productivity despite being miserable, you're training yourself to accept that suffering is the price of value. And this is where I want to introduce something crucial that most people completely miss about their own behavior. Before we continue into the final piece of this puzzle, I need you to really sit with something for a moment. The patterns we've been discussing, the alarms, the deadlines, the artificial urgency, they're not actually about productivity or success. They're about identity. And if you want to understand the deeper mechanics of why humans are trapped in this cycle, why you keep choosing torture over freedom, why you've normalized exhaustion as a badge of honor, I've created a complete guide that breaks down every psychological mechanism at play here. It's the ebook that walks you through the actual signals your body is sending when you ignore that alarm. It's in the description, and I've pinned it in the comments. This isn't a passive thing you stumble through. It's the roadmap to recognizing what's actually happening inside your mind. Now, let me tell you what humans fundamentally misunderstand about themselves. You think the problem is that you need discipline. You think if you're not miserable, you're not working hard enough. You've convinced yourselves that comfort is laziness. But here's the actual structure of what's happening. Humans have created a system where your worth is determined by how much you suffer for it. The system doesn't measure your actual contribution. It measures your compliance. It measures your willingness to wake up before you're rested. It measures your acceptance of deadlines that were arbitrary to begin with. It measures your visible exhaustion as proof of value. From a feline perspective, this is insane. Not because we're lazy. We're not lazy. We hunt. We play. We're active. But we only do those things when we're actually motivated to do them, when our bodies tell us it's time, when the energy is there. We don't set an arbitrary time and force ourselves to hunt at that exact moment, regardless of whether prey exists or whether we're rested. We don't accept a deadline from the universe and then spend 8 hours stressing about it before we even begin. We respond to actual conditions, actual needs, actual signals. Humans, on the other hand, have inverted this. You wake up not because you're rested, but because a device screamed at you. You go to work not because the work needs doing right now, but because that's when your schedule says work happens. You feel urgency not because there's actual danger, but because someone else decided a number on a calendar matters. And the deepest level of the trap is that you've internalized this so completely that you think it's natural, you think it's you. It's not you, it's architecture. It's infrastructure. It's the operating system you're running on, and you mistook the system for your own thoughts. Here's what your cat actually sees when you're caught in this cycle. You've created a system where you have to hurt yourself to prove you're worthwhile. And then you've told yourself it's not a choice. You've told yourself it's necessity. You've told yourself everyone does it, so it must be right. But cats have watched humans long enough to know that the ones who seem most miserable aren't the ones who contribute the most. They're the ones who've accepted the system completely, the ones who stopped questioning whether the alarm was necessary, the ones who believe that resting is failure. And now, finally, this is the secret I promised you at the beginning. The one thing that reframes everything, your cat doesn't judge you because you're lazy. Your cat judges you because you've convinced yourself that your cage is a home. You've put the bars there yourself, you lock them every night, you wake up and run toward them, and then you tell yourself it's success. Cats judge you because we recognize that you're suffering, and we recognize that you're choosing to suffer, and we recognize that you could choose something different, but you've become afraid of what that different thing might look like. That's not judgment. That's grief. Your cat grieves what you could be if you stopped running toward the thing that's hurting you. Cats grieve the fact that humans have such incredible capacity for choice and such profound inability to use it. We grieve that you've normalized sleeplessness. We grieve that you've made a virtue out of desperation. We grieve that you're so afraid of being seen as unproductive that you've sacrificed the thing productivity was supposed to protect in the first place, your life. So here's what I need you to understand as we close this out. The alarm isn't evil. Deadlines aren't inherently wrong. Structure can be beautiful. But when structure becomes a cage, when you're maintaining it out of fear rather than actual need, when you're sacrificing your peace for the appearance of productivity, that's when your cat starts keeping notes. That's when we judge. Not because we're superior, but because we're watching someone we live with slowly disappear into a system that's consuming them, and they've convinced themselves it's the only way. The takeaway here is brutally simple. You don't need to dismantle your entire life tomorrow. But you do need to start questioning which parts of your urgency are real and which parts are inherited programming. You need to start noticing when you're moving because something actually requires motion, and when you're moving because you're afraid of what happens if you stop. That's the shift. That's the moment where you start waking up to actual choice instead of automated compliance. This week, I want you to do something small. Pick one alarm, just one. Ask yourself, does this actually need to exist? Is there a real consequence if I don't set it, or have I just always set it because that's what you're supposed to do? And if it doesn't need to exist, delete it. Don't set it tomorrow. Let yourself wake naturally just once and feel what that's like. Not to be lazy, but to remember that you have a body that knows what it needs if you stop screaming at it long enough to listen. Your cat already knows how to do this. We wake when we're rested. We work when there's work to do. We rest when there isn't. We don't apologize for it. And maybe, just maybe, if you watch us long enough, you'll remember that you're an animal too. An animal that needs sleep. An animal that thrives on rhythm, not on rage. An animal that could choose presence over panic if you could just stop long enough to believe it was possible. Thank you for staying with me through this entire exploration. If this has shifted something in how you see your own patterns, I'd genuinely love to hear about it. Drop a comment below and tell me what alarm you're going to question first. And if you found this perspective useful, please subscribe so you don't miss when we dive into the next feline revelation about human behavior. Hit that notification bell too, because the cat side of YouTube is expanding, and you'll want to be here when we break down what your cat really thinks about your other so-called life choices. See you in the next one.